Good morning. This is Jason Dean yet again for coming at you for another Film Fanatic video, live and direct. So, yeah, thanks again for people who have been commenting on the videos and checking out shit. It's great. So many cool movies I've been watching lately. I've been on this really great tear of seeing a bunch of films that I haven't seen before and revisiting some movies. I just finished up the coverage of a combo pack that I bought at Goodwill, and it had two movies on it, and it was really fun. I just finished it the other night, just finished it last night, and really great, really great. There were some movies on the pack that I had never seen before. Trancers was one, killer sci-fi exploitation movie, and also one movie that just blew me away. That's now like on the top, easily on the top of my list as far as favorite slasher movies. This Canadian movie called Curtains. I had never seen it before, never heard about it before. It was on this disc. Blown away by it. Super awesome. Check out the little review. I've been really into one of the other cool things that's been happening as far as movies I've been really diving into and discovering the world of the Canadian horror exploitation scene, especially in the 70s, 80s, with movies like Black Christmas, being and always for like as long as I can remember, I've always been a huge fan of David Cronenberg, a real famous, probably the most famous Canadian director. Tying in, so many of his films are Canadian productions. Even now, I did a coverage of one of his films, his first movie, a while back last year called Shivers, which is such an awesome sci-fi horror exploitation movie. He kind of moved into different areas in his career. He became a little bit more of a commercially known horror director. Probably most, he's probably most well known for The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, which is just an epic movie. But that film was a big, huge budget film, and he was able to retain that same grittiness that he had in the exploitation world, and he was able to still bring those aspects to a big budget. Because with The Fly, which is just an amazing movie, I haven't done a show on that, and eventually I will. Which that was released through Fox Studios, a major studio. So amazing. And then other films, The Siege, which I discovered last year or 2 years ago, which is just an amazing action exploitation movie, also Canadian from the early 80s. Curtains, which I just watched the other night for the very first time. Blown away by that. That came out in 82. And then also probably the most famous Canadian slasher movie, I would say, it's probably safe to say, is My Bloody Valentine. Super underground movie, I think, in a lot of regards, and not talked about enough. But for what it is, being a slasher horror exploitation movie, probably the most well known Canadian movie. Black Christmas was another discovery that I made just recently. That movie predated all of these other films by quite a few years. That film was a really, really important movie. I think, to a degree, arguably it might be the most popular or the most important slasher movie ever made. Not only is it just an incredible movie, but it really serviced as a kind of a blueprint model for what slasher films would become in the late 70s into the 80s, which for me, like I've said, slasher films are that is my jam. That's for me the most important genre and my most loved genre. So that's the link. That is the thing. So, and obviously, that being said, there have been, to a degree, slasher films that predated Black Christmas, but with Black Christmas, it really felt like it was a crystallization of a real kind of format or formatted way of how you make a really great slasher film. And then that was really, after that film came out, it really had a tremendous impact on other filmmakers. And that really serviced as a blueprint for, probably thousands of movies that came out after. Super cool. And I finished up the box set, or the collection, last night. Another movie I watched that was really great, another horror classic, is Puppet Master. I love that movie to death. I actually love that franchise. I think that franchise is just kick ass. The other cool thing about that for me was I hadn't seen the Puppet Master in a very, very long time, and it has a really, the combo pack that I've been covering has a really great edition of that on DVD, and it's really good quality. And the coolest thing was I realized that David Schmoller was the director of Puppet Master, who is a director from Texas, who directed my favorite horror exploitation movie of all time, Tourist Trap, with Chuck Connors. That movie is the best. That movie rules. And so I didn't realize that he directed Puppet Master. And it's funny. I think when you think of your top 10 list, top 20, or your top 5, it's a hard thing to do generally. But I definitely have a loose list of films that are my favorite. And there are certain films that I can just say without a doubt, without any question, or that are my favorite. When it comes to the horror genre, when it comes to gritty, dirty, sleazy, cheesy horror exploitation movies, Tourist Trap is definitely my favorite. That movie is a slasher movie too, to a degree, played by Chuck Connors, but that movie is also, I think, a little bit more along the lines of an overall horror film to a degree, because that film has a lot of supernatural elements to it. So it's a little bit different. It has a little bit more than just, say, the typical slasher film kind of way of telling a story. Like, I just did a show, another movie I just saw too, which I forgot, that is also Canadian. That is I think an essential slasher film, is Prom Night with Jamie Lee Curtis. Also another Canadian slasher movie. Amazing. And when I say that Tourist Trap, for me, is my favorite of all time in the genre of horror exploitation, it, like I said, it is a slasher film, but I feel like it's a little bit different. It's a little bit, has a little bit of a bigger scope to it, because it has a lot of like a supernatural element to it. So it's a little bit different, but it's definitely a slasher film. But I feel like, like, say, in comparison to a movie like Prom Night, which is just a really old school, 100% slasher film, and it's just about the mass killer. It's about these teenagers that get picked off one by one with all of these fabulous kills. There's all this great, gratuitous sex, great practical effects, really awesome atmosphere, kind of sleazy. That's what I feel like a slasher film is. And for me, being a fan of slasher films, that's what kind of I'm hoping to see. So, and Prom Night does not really have a supernatural element, so it's a little bit different. But Tourist Trap is definitely my favorite horror exploitation movie of all time. I love that movie to death. I have multiple copies of that. I picked up a really great collector's edition of that a couple of years ago on Blu-ray. I've done a big show on that. I've talked about that movie a lot. And when it comes to, say, full on slasher movies, My favorite slasher film, and I've talked about this and I've done a show on it, is Bill Leswig's Maniac, 1980. That movie is one of the most disturbing films ever made, I think, in a lot of ways. But it's so gritty, it's so dirty. It was all shot in New York, and you feel like you're in the streets of New York. Uh, the kills are just unbelievable, amazing, and it's a really sleazy movie. It's just so incredible. That to me is like the definitive slasher movie. It's my favorite slasher movie of all time. So the other thing tonight is which I'm super excited to do. Bill Luswig, again, one of the greatest directors, one of the greatest figures in the horror exploitation world. He of course directed Maniac. He also created a really awesome franchise, the Maniac Cop series. He went on to direct many kinds of movies, and then he kind of retired from filmmaking. And about 10 or 15 years ago, he started a company called the Blue Underground, which is a really amazing company that specializes in exploitation movies. So he's still very much involved and invested in the exploitation genre. So very, very cool. And but tonight at the Waldo Theater, there's that series called Waldo After Dark, of where they've been doing these bi-monthly shows, sometimes two or three a month. They've been showing more movies lately, where they specialize in showing 70s and 80s uh, exploitation movies, and super awesome. What an amazing series! But tonight they're going to be showing Maniac Cop, the first one, which is such an awesome movie. One of the first roles starring Bruce Campbell, and Sam Raimi's in it too, from the Evil Dead. Super excited. I love that movie. It's I think, also one of the classic essential slasher movies of all time. I own that movie on Blu-ray. I have a really great edition of that. I've seen it so many times. It's super silly and super campy, but it's also a pretty, brutal movie, and very, very cool. I love that movie to death. So I'm super excited to see it on the big screen, because the theater itself in Waldoboro is amazing. It has the best site. It has the best picture. It has the best system that I know of in Maine. It's just incredible. So I'm super excited to see it on the big screen. Like, that's crazy. So I'm gonna be doing that, and I'm gonna be doing a show. I'm gonna do another show about Maniac Cop, and I'm gonna be coming from another event. From I'm gonna be going. Some friends of mine are playing before the movie, so I'm gonna be coming from there. And if there's a little bit of time, I might record a little bit of a video to to upload on the channel about going to see Maniac Cop, because you know it's a it's one of the best slasher movies ever made, and Bill Lustig is the man. So stay tuned for that. And and I finished the ten movie pack last night. Some of the movies on it were movies that I wasn't, I don't know, so excited to watch, but overall, killer purchase for like $3. Just an amazing selection of films. It also has some movies on there that are not very good, and that I didn't really want to sit through, because I know I've seen them all before, and they're all like not very good. They're kind of terrible. Um, and I don't usually, I try not to do videos or reviews on movies I don't like. I try to just do shows on things that I'm really fired up about, and try to keep it, pretty positive for the most part. So one of the other cool things that happened when I went and I originally bought this 10 pack is I bought a bunch of other movies. And like I said, I finished up the 10 pack, the 10 or the one movie pack, but it's got 10 movies, 10 horror movies on it. There were a few movies on it that are just not very good, and I tried watching them, but they were not very good. It's got one of the movies that it does have on there is one of the Hellraiser movies, Inferno, which is pretty bad. I mean, I love the Hellraiser films, in particular the first one directed by Clive Barker, and also the second one, which I think is probably the best one. Like that movie is just amazing. The scope of it is just incredible. The other ones that came out afterwards are really super low budget and not in a good way. The low budgetness, or because the movies that followed after the first two, the budget was pretty minuscule to compared to the first two, and so it really suffers from a production standpoint, and the stories are just really not strong, and it doesn't really have anything to do that is tied into really the universe that Clive Barker created. They're kind of terrible. So I didn't watch that movie. I've seen all of the other franchise, the other films in the Hellraiser franchise, and the ones after the first two are kind of unwatchable. I think they're pretty terrible, but so I didn't watch that one. That was included in the bonus pack. I do really like the remake of Hellraiser that came out last year. That one's actually really good. I did a show on a review of that movie, but the franchise as a whole is kind of crappy. There's quite a few. I think there's like five other films, but they're pretty bad. And also the other films that are on there. There's a Wes Craven did a. I think he produced it. I'm not sure. I think he produced it. His name is on it. He might have directed, but there was a Dracula movie he did. Dracula. I think it's called Dracula AD, and I can't remember if he directed it or produced it. It's an okay movie. I mean, it's pretty decent. I remember it being okay, but that also turned into a franchise, and which is, again, they just kind of get worse. They're really dated and not a cool way, and not a and they're just not strong movies. And he didn't. I know Wes Craven didn't direct the other films because there's like three or four in the franchise, and they're just kind of bad '90s movies. And the movie that is included on this pack is the sequel to the Wes Craven movie Dracula. And this one is called Dracula 2 Ascension. It's okay, Jason Lee's in it. I like him a lot. I watched it last night, but then I was just like, I can't really get into this. I'd rather watch something else. So I didn't finish it. I've seen them all before, and they're not that great. So I skipped on that one. The other movie that it has on there, which is actually really awesome, is Halloween H2O. I really love that movie. I think it's one of the best in the franchise. It's really good. It's real fresh. It's got a lot of great horror energy to it. It's great kills, really great suspense. It's actually a really great movie. That's included in the set. I did a big show on the Halloween franchise, so I'm not gonna do another video on that. Awesome movie. The other movie or collection on the tape is a Ray Bradbury made for TV series. I mean, Ray Bradbury is an iconic, figure in the world of horror and suspense, and also some science fiction. A great writer. But there was a TV show or a TV series where they made basically a TV versions of these shorts of some of his short stories, and it's cool, but it's that is all included on the tapes as well. But I started watching those, and those are kind of awful. They're not very good. They're not really. Again, they really suffer from a really low production value, and it's got this real dated thing to it, and it just doesn't work to me. And they're really cheesy, and I don't know. I couldn't get into them, so I kind of scrapped watching any of those. I think I had seen those as a kid growing up, but they're not very good. It doesn't really do Ray Bradbury his great work. It doesn't do him any justice. So I skipped on that. But the other one that I picked up, which I started watching last night, which I'm actually really really enjoying, is this Nightmare on Elm Street documentary. I got this on DVD, and again, I'm always amazed by what you can find at Goodwill. Like it's just been super awesome, and there's been so many great little discoveries that I've been making, especially like finishing up this 10 movie collection. But this I'd never seen, and this is really really good. Actually, I started watching it last night. I got maybe 45 minutes or so into it. I started watching it kind of late, but I'm really digging it so far. It's actually really interesting, and it's a 4 hour documentary all about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And it's got all of these great interviews with Wes Craven and Robert Englund and all of the people and all of the folks involved with all of the films. It's pretty long. It's 4 hours, and I got this for $10. Super excited, and I believe I don't own any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies on Blu-ray, which is weird because I'm a huge, Freddy fan, especially the first one, and I'm a huge Wes Craven fan. So I, for whatever reason, I don't own them on Blu-ray, but eventually I will. But I do believe that this documentary, I did see a box set a while back, and it was a little bit pricey, so I didn't buy it. But I did see a box set with all of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and I do believe that this was included in it. So I was super excited that this was being sold separately, and it was a really good price. And considering it's literally a documentary on all of the films that were made, and there's a ton of films that were made in the franchise of Nightmare on Elm Street. As a whole, I'm a really big fan of Freddy Krueger. Obviously one of the most iconic monsters ever on the big screen. Huge Wes Craven fan, especially the first part of his career, just so awesome. And my favorite is easily the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and so I was really excited about this, and it's really good. It comes the documentary itself is 4 hours long, and it's very really the interviews are really interesting. It's not like a kind of a crappy knockoff production of a documentary. It's actually really good, very interesting. So yeah, I was super excited. I started watching this last night, and the other thing that's really cool is it comes with a bonus disc of another, I think, 2 or 3 hours of special features. So very very cool. And I got this last week. I got this the same time that I bought a bunch of other movies at Goodwill. The Goodwill in Rockland is great. Really is. They have, I go there fairly often. I'm down in the Rockland area quite a bit, so I try to hit that place up, and I'm always blown away by certain things that they have there. And again, I don't really buy a lot of DVDs, but every now and then I come across some really great DVDs that they have there, and I'll buy them. I try to focus on buying Blu-rays, but this is really, really great so far. Just started it, and there's a long way to go, but I'm totally enjoying it. I started watching it kind of late last night, but it's very cool. The other one that I bought a little while back, which I need to buy, which is another reason why every now and then I'll buy a DVD, is I got a Criterion collection of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, directed by Terry Gilliam, starring Johnny Depp, and it's the story of Hunter S. Thompson, a movie, and it's an amazing movie. I love that movie to death, but they had, and it was really cheap, a beautiful Criterion collection of that film, or a Criterion edition of that on DVD. And it comes with 3 discs, and I haven't watched it yet, but I'm super excited to watch that. So every now and then I come across a special movie, and I consider this to be a special find. I will definitely snag it up. But very, very cool. This came out quite a few years ago. It came out in 2010. So it kind of came out after more or less the franchise concluded. The Freddy vs. Jason movie came out after this, but this is pretty much the conclusive retrospective kind of documentary about the entire franchise of Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's really good. Super excited, and I just started watching it, so I'm looking forward to watching it again tonight, maybe finishing it up. So very cool find. That's between my favorite place, of course, is going to Blue Moose, and I always seek out Blu-rays, and they have an amazing selection of horror exploitation movies there. But Goodwill is awesome too, and especially the one in Rockland. And I've gotten some great films. There's a couple other movies coming up that I'm gonna be getting to and reviewing as soon as I finish up this big monster that I also bought at Goodwill. So very cool place, really great find. I'm really excited about this, and I like I said before, I do believe that this 4 hour documentary was included or is included in the box set of Nightmare on Elm Street on DVD 4K. I didn't buy it. I remember looking at it and seeing it in the stores, in my travels at Bull Moose. I didn't buy it because the price was a little bit high. It looked awesome. And, when I go there, I try to find more obscure movies a lot of the times, but eventually I'll buy them. And because I think, the Nightmare on Elm Street series and Freddy Krueger, and onto himself as a iconic monster, definitely, one of the most important monsters out there. Definitely part of the slasher genre. So, yeah, very very cool. Very very impressed with this. So this is Jason Dean. Thanks again for your support, and we will see you next time. Peace.